Well, just when I thought, I was going to have a fun, relaxing weekend, I get the surprise treat of OverSimplified posting another video. To be honest, I've been waiting for this for a long while since part 2. So, anyways, pretty much before we begin, just going to say, just as a brief overview, Hannibal was wrecking around Italy during this time. Well, technically, what is now modern day Italy, but is wrecking around the Italian boot of the Roman Empire at this point, and is causing chaos. All seems hopeless for the Romans as well. Just the other battle was there was one massive massacre of a battle that killed a large portion of their military force that Hannibal successfully accomplished. And yeah, that was quite a demoralizing blow. Even though it's been almost a full year since OverSimplified posted a video, I can't wait to jump right back in. Once again, before I begin, all the copyright once again belongs to OverSimplified, as I'm only reacting and making stuff for this. Anyways, yeah, that's also true. Yeah, he did say that he won't take a year. He almost did, but you know. Yeah. Anyways, let's begin. Once again, all copyright belongs to OverSimplified, and I'm using this as partial educational because honestly, I like the content. Original videos in the description, and let's begin.
This video was made possible by NordVPN. Click the link in the description to get an exclusive deal with 4 extra months. Head over to the merch store to pick up some character pins, calendars, and more.
Aww.
Ever needed to enact vengeance on your enemies, but always felt too shy?
Yep.
Well, fear not. Little Hannibal is here. Support our channel by heading over to oversimplified.youtube.com and buying your very own pocket-sized piece of vengeance. Our exclusive Hannibal figure is in limit.
Also, for you guys wondering why I'm allowing him to play his ads, is because A, I genuinely love OverSimplified, and B, I'm not going to stop you guys from making money. I know I've skipped his later ad stuff because, I actually like hearing about the historical stuff, but when it's all done at the front, I don't mind.
Apply. So get it quick.
Ooh, previously on Dragon Ball Z. Let's see. Yep. Scorpio the Elder died in here. Yep. 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 And now here's going to be a disastrous one, Kane. Ugh. Just look at that number. And remember, they entrapped a large amount of the Roman force in that time. And outwardly sliced each and every one down.
I'm done spending an
obscene... Oh, come on. Just because I just said that I liked ads in the front, that didn't mean YouTube ads. That just meant OverSimplified ads. Alright. Yeah, I don't blame them.
How do you solve a problem like Hannibal?
Get Scipio the Younger. who in the past few videos I actually mistook the elder being the younger one actually, but that was partially because I wasn't made too aware that there were two Scipios within the same time era. That was on me, I will admit. I should have done a bit more remembering, but I just got excited when I heard the word Scipio and Hannibal. So I jumped to a conclusion a bit too early. But anyways, let's continue. Sorry about that.
Problem like Hannibal. In a crisis such as this, the Romans often turn to religion. What's going on? Are the gods mad at us? The gods must be mad at us! But why? Why? No, why? 2 of the Vestal virgins broke their sacred oath and lost their virginity. That's why Hannibal's kicking our ass. What should we do with them? Appease the gods! Bury them alive!
Seems about right. For those that think this is evil, no, this is just how Romans were.
Who did they even boink? It was those guys! Huh? What should we do with them? Beat them to death! Needless to say, the
Yeah, that's also accurate.
were freaking out.
Yeah.
Okay, now that that's out of our system, let's go find a real solution. The real solution, first of all, involved raising a new army. Remember, at Cannae, Hannibal had wiped out the biggest army Rome had ever fielded. Possibly
That is true.
80% of Rome's military-aged men.
Yup. Which, that alone. Yeah. Now that was a true massacre. But one massive victory for Hannibal.
Needed to replace those losses, and fast, before Hannibal arrived at their gates. But where would those replacements come from? Rome had a few ideas. Quick, lower the age of conscription. You, put down those Digimons. You're a soldier now.
Yeah.
And all these slaves with the promise of freedom. And equip them with all these religious weapons and armor. Anything we've got. All right, men. You are Rome's last line of defense. Man the walls!
For those that think that that's a joke, part of it is, but at the same time, Rome was freaking out. OverSimplified's doing a pretty good job of showing how short it is, but man, they were in a massive panic.
After the earth-shattering defeat at Cannae, the Romans expected Hannibal to arrive at their gates any day now. In Hannibal's camp, the mood was triumphant. We did it! We won! So when do we march on Rome? Today? I'm free in 10 minutes. Whoa, slow down. We're not going to Rome.
What?
We're staying right here. Are you an idiot, Hannibal? No, I'm smart. We don't need to march on Rome, because after what we did, the Romans are definitely going to surrender. Watch. Hey, Jim Bob. Yes, sir? Go to Rome and discuss peace terms. Yes, sir. Hey, I'm here to discuss peace terms. Piss off!
Fair enough. There's two things you never do with a Roman. One, you don't do what a Roman does in a modern age. And secondly, you'd never ask them to surrender.
Told me to piss off! What? They didn't surrender? No! And they were mean!
A bit of a over-exaggeration from OverSimplified, which is what I like, but, in actual terms, yeah.
Hannibal was learning that Rome had an unprecedented attitude towards surrender. Even when Hannibal offered to ransom thousands of prisoners back to Rome, a pretty common practice in ancient warfare, the
Yep.
Romans refused, opting to let their own men be sold into slavery rather than paying a penny to the enemy.
Yeah, not exactly a good look, but hey, And you don't want to surrender or give your enemy any help.
Clear that in order to defeat Rome, you had to annihilate them. If any Roman man was still standing, you hadn't yet won. But still.
Let's see. Start an elephant petting zoo. Sacrifice a child. Oh, you already did that. Wine and cheese night. That is good.
Hannibal decided not to march on Rome, and it was a controversial decision. Even one of his own commanders famously told him, "Hannibal, you know how to win a battle, but you do not know how to win a war."
He's not wrong.
From Hannibal's perspective, perhaps he knew his army was designed to survive behind enemy lines and sow chaos. It may not have been well equipped to undertake a risky siege of one of the most fortified cities on Earth.
Fair enough.
Plus, with many of the southern cities defecting to side after Cannae, Hannibal likely thought things were going pretty well, as is. We'll stay the course. Okay, so the Romans didn't surrender after 3 major defeats. But surely they'll surrender after 4.
The Wooble.
Why do I get these ads? Come on. I don't care about this Wooble thing. All I want is just to watch Oversimplified with my lovely members of the KK Nation.
Unfortunately for Hannibal, however, after Cannae, the Romans well and truly learnt their lesson. Well, would you look at that? Remind me, who was it that said Hannibal was too dangerous to fight? You. And who said we shouldn't fight him directly? You. And who tried to fight him directly? Us. And what happened? We lost 20% of our military-aged men.
Yup. Fabian was right.
That's right. So tell me, when Hannibal approaches, what do? We run away.
Yeah. The old
genius. Clap for me. After Cannae, Fabius Maximus kind of became the unofficial leader of Rome. Even if others were elected consul, his influence was unparalleled, and Rome quit.
Because out of the few Roman generals, Fabian knew how to defeat Hannibal, but did they listen to him? No. I bet he was happy to rub this into their face. But at the same time, I don't believe he would have been eager to rub it into their face because, oh boy, you know, they're a bit screwed at the moment.
Reverted to the Fabian strategy of avoiding Hannibal.
Yeah.
They knew they couldn't defeat him, so instead, they hoped they could at least contain him. They raised an impressively large number of men, partly by enlisting
Wow.
teenagers, slaves, and criminals.
Seems about right.
Rather than trying to fight Hannibal, they instead turned their attention towards those treacherous southern cities that had switched sides. Thanks for joining the winning team, guys. Here's the deal. All you have to do is provide me some troops and defend your own city, since I'll be too busy to defend it for you. Now, I'm going to briefly turn around, look this way, and when I look back, you better not be being massacred by the Romans. Oh, for goodness sake, the Romans!
Yeah. That seemed about right. If it's another thing Romans can do. Hold on a sec, let me move this out. As the flags shown here, these were Hannibal-aligned cities. So, and of course, the famous Romans are going to do what they do best. Massacres. But don't worry, they're not in the name of Christ for yet. That comes later.
Spread out their newly formed legions and began attacking the southern cities here, there, everywhere. The southern cities expected to have Hannibal's protection, and Hannibal was inundated with requests for help. He was forced to run around southern Italy, trying to encourage defection while rescuing his own allies. But when he showed up, the Romans would often leave, only to come back the second he went away again. And as these southern cities found themselves being punished severely by the Romans, they began to realize that joining Hannibal may not have been such a good idea.
Yep.
Hey! You think you're so big? Attacking my allies? Why don't you come out and face me? Because you're scary!
Fair enough.
The fickle southern cities frequently switched sides depending on who appeared to be winning, and the whole situation became a nightmare for Hannibal to control, playing a constant game of Roman whack-a-mole to fend
Yep.
off the enemy armies. Having not long ago seemed near extinction, the Romans had managed to turn the situation around by placing Hannibal in a clever predicament. If he left southern Italy, the southern cities would likely capitulate to Rome, meaning he couldn't leave. And since the Romans wouldn't fight him, he couldn't inflict any more dangerous defeats. For now, Hannibal had been muzzled.
Ah, that's a good joke. For those that don't know, that's a reference to Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs. Although, if I had to explain that to you, you were obviously not old enough to understand the reference.
Italy had been his prize for his impressive Italian campaign, but those clever Romans found a way to take his prize and turn it into his prison.
Yep.
With the Fabian strategy neutralizing Hannibal for now, the Romans were freed up to refocus their attention to other fronts.
Yep.
This whole time, while we've been discussing Hannibal and the Italian campaign of the Second Punic War, fighting had actually been occurring elsewhere.
Yep. Carthage is gonna get, well, if OverSimplified wanted to do the Third Punic War, that was just a one-sided massacre. But I digress.
For example, in 216 BC, the Romans had sent an army north to punish the Celtic tribes that had joined Hannibal.
Yep.
However, as the Romans entered the Latana forest, little did they know those clever Celts had set up a trap. The Celts dropped trees on them, decimating the Romans, and they even took the commander's head to use as a religious sippy cup. So
Yeah, that was normal for the time.
pretty bad. Whoa, very bad.
Yep.
Thankfully, in other theaters, things were going a bit better. For example, let's look at Sicily. After Cannae, internal chaos in Syracuse caused this longtime Roman ally to switch sides, because
Aw.
being a winner is more fun. The Carthaginians also landed troops, hoping to retake their lost island, while Roman proconsul Claudius Marcellus moved in to besiege Syracuse. The siege was a brutal slug
Yep.
the Romans, largely due to the presence of one famous scientist and mathematician, Archimedes.
That is
He lived
true.
in Syracuse at the time, and he invented a variety of clever contraptions to defend the city.
He also discovered a lot of stuff. By the way, yeah, that's correct. He was the guy that invented Eureka. Yeah, he's the guy that figured out buoyancy. He filled up a tub full of water, then went in it, and then was surprised that all of a sudden, all the water spilled out. And he was like, Eureka! And then ran back home screaming that. But, let's see.
Giant claw that could grab and destroy Roman ships, and purportedly
Yeah.
even a big mirror that could magically ignite them.
Both of those were quite big. And yeah, Archimedes. Powerful ancient scientist. The dude was skilled and was determined. He also discovered a lot of other stuff, which is quite good. I'm forgetting the name, but he discovered a way on how to suck up water from using a rotational thing. I'm forgetting what it's called, but yeah. And for those wondering why the Roman ships would suddenly catch on fire, it's because sunlight plus mirror equals focus beam. Focus beam hitting something for a period of time that's flammable. Well, guess what happens?
Carthaginian forces on the island attempted to come to Syracuse's rescue, but luckily for the Romans, they all got diarrhea. And
Yeah,
died. Finally,
that seems about right.
in the city itself, the day of a big annual religious festival came, and the Syracusans said, "Well, fellas,
Wait,
we
hold on.
have a big annual."
Oh. Alright, so if I'm remembering correctly, Syracuse at this time would have been directly more under a Greek influence, or at least would have had a lot of roots from the ancient Greeks at this point, so it makes sense why the ancient Greek pantheon will be there. For example, Artemis, the Greek goddess of the hunt, and is also the chariot driver of Selene, the Titan moon. The physical embodiment of the moon. She's kind of like how Apollo is pretty much the chariot driver of Helios, the sun. She's kind of like that for the moon, but that's like a maybe. Maybe at times, as she's more of the goddess of the hunt, but she also does some stuff at night with Selene.
Festival came, and the Syracusans said, "Well, fellas, we've been holding off the Romans for over a year now. I think we've earned ourselves a little party."
Big mistake.
Sir, we're still under a massive siege. Are you sure? They'll probably take advantage of it. Well, Carl, I'm taking advantage of the open bar.
Fair enough.
Sure, they've got battering rams. Well, Carl, I'm ramming these hors d'oeuvres into my mouth. Sir,
Yeah.
tear down our walls. Well, Carl, I'm tearing it up on the dance floor. Sir, they're literally at the gates. Well, Carl, I'm literally at the cheese platter.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Marcellus took advantage of the drunken festivities, stormed the city, and plundering ensued. In the chaos, Marcellus ordered Archimedes be captured alive. Some sources say Roman troops entered Archimedes' home, and they were like, "Hey man, are you the math guy? Go away, I'm drawing circles. Look, I just need to know if you're the nerd. Come on, bro, get out of here, you're messing up my circles." No,
Yeah.
good time to draw circles. It's always a good time for circles. I love circles. Either stop drawing the circles or I kill you. I choose the circles. This
Yeah, he discovered a lot of stuff, and yeah, Rome was a bit furious about this.
not securing Archimedes. By 210 BC, the Romans did secure Sicily and also put down a Carthage-supported rebellion on nearby Sardinia. 2 Roman successes, and there were more to come. After
This should be fun.
King Philip V of Macedon saw an opportunity. He was concerned with recent Roman expansion into Illyria. And so, when he saw Hannibal annihilating the Romans in Italy, he said, "Oh my gosh, hey! Hey, Hannibal! Oh my gosh, you're so cool! Let's form an alliance and annihilate the Romans together!" Sure. Yes! Hannibal hoped to secure Philip's help in fighting Rome, but a Roman army was sent to the region, stirred up Philip's other Greek opponents, and kept
Yeah, that seemed about right.
down in Greece for the entire duration of the war. Another kind of Roman success.
I mean, in the end, Rome still stayed there.
But the main front Rome was hoping to push Carthage back in was Spain. The riches of Spain made it one of Carthage's most valuable possessions, and the Romans were eager to weaken it. Remember way back at the start of the war, the consul Scipio was supposed to go to Spain, but ended up rushing back to Italy when he realized Hannibal was crossing the Alps. He then faced Hannibal at Ticinus and had to be rescued by his son. Well, after he recovered from his wounds, he proceeded with the original plan and joined his brother in Spain.
Yeah.
Then, the 2 Scipio brothers fought a successful campaign against Hannibal's brother, Hasdrubal. Over the next few years, they won a number of key victories, even
Yep.
taking Saguntum, the city that had kick-started this entire war. Yet more Roman success. A trend appeared to be emerging. Whenever the Romans fought anyone other than Hannibal, they usually came out on top. Perhaps these other fronts would be the key to Rome taking back control.
And guess which front is currently open that they're not taking? I'll give you a hint. Ooh. Well, you can guess where. Where now? Yeah.
War. Perhaps it was time for Rome to return to their old ways of being the aggressive go-getters. And perhaps it would help if Rome had a Hannibal of their own.
Yeah.
Scipio, the younger, was the son of Publius Scipio, currently fighting in Spain. This made him a member of one of Rome's most prestigious families. Not much is known of his childhood, although there is one story of how he was getting hot and heavy with a young lady, only to have his dad barge in and drag him out wearing nothing but a cloak. This story was written...
Wait, hold on, let me see. Aww.
Roman poet to make Scipio look bad, but by modern standards has ended up making him look pretty rad. My guess is if Rome had a high school football team, Scipio would be the quarterback.
Yeah.
Scipio was only 18 when the Second Punic War broke out. He was at the Battle of Ticinus, where he famously rescued his father, and he was one of the survivors of the Battle of Cannae, after which he threatened to cut down any man who dared abandon Rome. He was a natural leader and up to his ears in spunk, and therefore...
Oh, American English, got it.
He rose through the Roman ranks shockingly fast. We need a new military tribune, but Hannibal has killed so many men, we're running out of options. Put me in, coach! Scipio, you're only 20. You can't be a tribune. Come on, coach. Put me in. Well, you do have a lot of spunk. All right, you're hired. We need to elect a...
Yeah, that's true.
Ida. Who do we have
Hold on,
left?
give me a sec.
Right, you're hired. We need to elect a new Ida.
Alright, officials in charge of public buildings, festivals, and markets. Got it.
Who do we have left? Put me in, coach. Scipio, you don't meet the minimum age requirement. I got this, coach. I got this. Well, okay then. You're in.
Yeah!
Ugh, my room's a mess. I gotta cook dinner. Oh, and would you look at that? My fly's down. Life sucks. Put me in, coach.
Yeah!
Wow, you're so spunky. When Scipio was 25, however, he received some bad news.
Oh, no.
His father and uncle in Spain had both been defeated in battle, and shockingly, both of them were killed. The news must have been devastating for the young Scipio, but it was also devastating for Rome, as almost all of their Spanish gains were wiped away. Okay, listen up! We need someone to go and replace the Scipios in Spain. So, who's up for it? Come on, who's gonna go? Fabius, Spain seems unwinnable. There's no glory to be had there. Yeah, the glory is here, defending the homeland from Hannibal. Well, somebody has to go. I said, well, somebody has to go. Put me in, coach! Scipio was eager.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Be the one to go and replace his father and uncle in Spain. However, there was concern amongst the older senators. You're only 26. You can't lead a military campaign. He's right. That's a good point. And you're 71. You can't stand up without a little urine dribbling down your leg. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's also a good point.
Scipio didn't meet the typical requirements for the position, but as the only person willing to go, this young piece of hot Roman meat was unanimously elected proconsul and sent to lead the Roman armies in Spain. He hoped to carry out a campaign as impressive as Hannibal's had been in Italy. In fact, Scipio rather admired the one-eyed general. Scipio, you've got a Hannibal poster in your room. Yes, but he's the enemy. I'll let you in on a secret, Billy. You know how we're gonna win this war? By marching straight at the enemy? No, that's the old way. We've gotta be less Roman and a little more Hannibal. Hey, by the way, don't just barge into my room. That's an infringement of my privacy.
Agreed.
Privacy? Privacy, you say? Well, Scipio,
Oh,
if
no.
it's privacy you want, then you, my friend, need Nord.
Yeah!
Don't touch me. How would you like to be innocently downloading inspirational photos of Nicolas Cage, only to realize it's malware stealing your data?
I'm
telling
sorry,
all
but
your
I
friends
have
you
to
still
skip
sleep
this. I'm sorry, OverSimplified buddy. I want to get back to the video. Video, dude. As much as I like your ads at the beginning, I don't need a breeder. I need to, well, obviously begin watching more, because honestly, this is some of the best content I've watched on YouTube for a while. Brings me joy in history.
And as always, you'll be supporting my channel. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, where were we? Oh yeah. Hannibal contained a young piece of hot Roman meat sent to lead the Roman armies in Spain. Scipio was charismatic, extremely confident, bold, and probably most importantly of all, he thought differently from other Roman generals. So, Skippy, what's the plan? Don't call me that. We're Roman, so same thing as usual, right? We march straight at the enemy, right? Get this, Billy. No, we don't. Scipio was a real outside-the-box thinker. There were 3 main Carthaginian armies in Spain, 2 led by Hannibal's brothers, Hasdrubal and Mago, and another led by Hasdrubal Gisco. Most Roman generals might have looked at these armies and said, I just gotta, march straight at these guys and kick their ass and stuff. But not Scipio. At a time when many believed winning battles won wars.
Yeah, that's true.
Scipio's greatest strengths was an ability to see the overall strategy behind his actions. He knew that Spain was the closest thing Hannibal had to a base of support. With its mass resources and manpower, it's where Hannibal likely hoped to get supplies and reinforcements from. Spain's base of support was the city of New Carthage, the most fortified city on the peninsula, perfectly positioned to communicate with and receive supplies from Africa. And so,
Yep.
Scipio managed to take New Carthage. He could take Spain. And if he took Spain, then maybe Hannibal would fall. To Scipio, Spain wasn't just some sideshow. It was the main show. And it all rested on New Carthage. But a surprise attack on Carthage's capital city in Spain? It was a ridiculous idea. Even if you pull off the 7-day forced...
Yeah, even though at the time it was ridiculous. Hey, guess what? Genius plan.
Past the Carthaginian armies to New Carthage. Once you get there, you'd only have a couple weeks to take the city before the Carthaginians arrived to kick your ass. Sieges of cities that fortified usually took months, if not years. So, Scipio, how are you going to pull this off? Well, first of all, to make sure the surprise plan stayed hidden, Scipio kept it a total secret, even from his own men. Where are we going, Skippy? I'm not telling you. Is it Disneyland? I'm not telling you. I think that means we're going to Disneyland. This secrecy kept the Carthaginians from preemptively reinforcing the city. As a result, New Carthage was left under-garrisoned because the Carthaginians believed it to be kind of naturally impenetrable. It was surrounded on 3 sides by a lagoon and only accessible via a narrow isthmus. What's an isthmus, you ask?
Well, that's the piece of land that separates 2 bodies of water.
Maybe read a book. All right, Scipio, you made it to New Carthage. Now the other Carthaginian armies are only a 10 days march from coming and kicking your ass. Just what were you thinking? Well, Scipio had learned something crucial. Every afternoon, the tides made the lagoon around New Carthage briefly shallow enough to cross. So, he ordered a large diversionary attack on the main city gates, distracting the city's defenders. Then, a small infiltration force traversed the lagoon, climbed the unguarded northern walls, and entered the city. They ambushed the guards and opened the city gates to the rest of Scipio's army. And just like that, New Carthage had fallen. In a single day, Scipio had taken Carthage's capital city in Spain. And he made it look easy.
I'm not gonna lie, it is still impressive even by modern day standards.
He seized much of Carthage's war supplies, several silver mines near the city, and various powerful Iberian tribes even joined his side. And now he was in a great position to take on the other Carthaginian armies in Spain. Wow, Skippy, you're amazing. Don't call me that. How'd you know the lagoon would get shallow? It's almost like you speak to the gods. No, I told him. All the local farmers know about the lagoon. Yes, that's it. I speak to the gods.
Yeah, that's true, but yeah, no, all the local farmers knew about it and probably did inform him.
Skippy, you're amazing. Don't call me that. How'd you know the lagoon would get shallow? It's almost like you speak to the gods. No, I told him. All the local farmers know about the lagoon. Yes, that's it. I speak to the gods. Scipio had no problem allowing his men to think he was divinely inspired. Roman
That's a symbol of a lot of military leaders. Not sure why, it just happens to be.
also tell us another of Scipio's traits. He was apparently quite merciful in victory and often protected the inhabitants of captured cities.
Huh?
Spencer! What are you doing? Well, I was just about to murder this family. Hey,
Yeah, that seemed about right.
Spencer, no! Can I at least kill the dad? No! What about the... No!
Aw.
Oh, you're mean! The Carthaginian generals in the region must have been shocked at the loss of their capital city. There was now a Terminator in Spain, and he was coming. In 208 BC, he made a move on Hasdrubal, hoping to defeat him before the other Carthaginian armies could come and link up. When Hasdrubal heard Scipio was coming, he said,
Yeah, that seemed about right.
did the sensible thing and climbed a big hill for safety. Hey! Get down here! I want to kill you. Fat chance, Vin Diesel! Well, he doesn't have to be rude. So what's the plan then, Scipio?
Fair enough.
This time, we march straight up and at him. Right? Right, Scipio? Billy? No. Scipio once again displayed a distinctly not Roman approach to fighting, when instead of marching straight up and at him, Scipio feigned a frontal skirmish, only to pull off a surprise uphill envelopment. Not an easy thing to do, but Scipio had trained his army to pull off maneuvers that typical Roman armies couldn't. After the battle, the defeated Hasdrubal fled Spain, hoping to link up with his brother Hannibal in Italy.
Oh boy. He's not gonna make it across the Alps.
Hannibal desperately needed the help. As Scipio was dominating in Spain, Hannibal's struggles in southern Italy continued. He was convinced that if he just received ample supplies and reinforcements, he could reverse his fortunes and get back to kicking Rome's ass. But for the remainder of the war, he would suffer a frustrating lack of support from the Carthaginian Senate. After Cannae, Hannibal had sent his brother Mago to Carthage, where he famously poured out golden rings taken from fallen Roman knights. He told the Senate that with reinforcements, Hannibal could finish the job. But a growing faction in the Senate, possibly jealous of Hannibal's rising influence, opposed sending any help. In the end, a large number of the reinforcements gathered for Hannibal now ended up being diverted to stop Scipio in Spain.
Yeah. Hannibal did not really have a good... Well, I mean, he was good for the Carthaginians. It's just, when he becomes a threat to power, the leaders start, not wanting him to, steal their job.
As he had hoped, Scipio's campaign in Spain was actively harming Hannibal in Italy. However, those reinforcements meant that when Scipio made a move on the remaining Carthaginian armies in Spain, they now likely outnumbered him. With the odds heavily stacked against him, it would take some serious skill to win this battle. This time we're gonna march straight at them, right? No, Billy! Ooh. The preceding Battle of Ilipa is often considered Scipio's masterpiece because it was positively oozing with deception and trickery. First,
as Waiter wrote in The Art of War, of whenever it was written, deception and trickery are the most important abilities a commander must do in order to lead their armies to success.
Both sides spent several days forming up and facing off without actually fighting. On each day, Scipio placed his strongest Roman legions in the center with his weaker Iberian allies on the sides. Seeing this, the Carthaginians were like, "This guy's an idiot. We've seen his plan. His strongest troops are going to be in the center. So let's form all of our battle plans based on this information. I'm sure he won't change anything at the last minute." Then,
well, guess what happens?
day of battle came. Scipio woke up the Carthaginians with an early morning attack, causing them to rush out of camp without breakfast. When the Carthaginians lined up with their strongest troops in the center to meet Scipio's, they were stunned to find that Scipio had completely reversed his order.
Yep.
The weaker Carthaginian sides now found Scipio's strongest bearing down on them. Then, In an extremely impressive maneuver, the well-trained Roman wings even stretched out during their approach, hitting the Carthaginians from the sides. The Carthaginian center could have turned to help, but Scipio had ordered his center to approach so slowly that Carthage's center could do nothing but just stand and wait. In this way, the outnumbered Scipio had cleverly controlled events so that the bulk of the strongest Carthaginian troops couldn't even fight during the battle.
Yeah. Still, this is why deception is important for war. You need to trick them good.
Completely removed them from the equation. The incredible Scipio had inflicted a monumental defeat on a much larger enemy force, and the Battle of Elysia was the final nail in the coffin for Carthaginian Spain. Yet more tribespeople continued to side with the Romans, and the remaining Carthaginians retreated to the coast and eventually fled the peninsula. And would you look at that? In just a few years, the incredible young Scipio had turned Spain completely red.
Yep.
The Carthaginians must have been stunned. His Spanish campaign had almost been as impressive as Hannibal's campaign in Italy. In fact, see if any of this sounds familiar. In Spain, Scipio had used the environment of the battlefield to his advantage. He staged ambushes by concealed troops. He treated local tribespeople well, earning their friendship. He even once forced his enemy to come out and fight him without breakfast. Each and every one of these tactics
were all done by Hannibal.
Possibly borrowed from a certain one-eyed general. In all the battles Scipio had fought against Hannibal, it seemed he may have been taking notes.
Hey! Scipio!
What?
Stop stealing my tactics!
I'm 700 miles away. I can't hear you.
Fair enough.
What did you say?
What?
What?
Better yet, Scipio's achievement in taking a well-fortified city, plus his understanding of the overall strategy, has led some historians to argue he wasn't just as good as Hannibal. Scipio may actually have been better.
No, I fully agree he was a bit better than Hannibal, but it's kind of like without Hannibal there to begin with this stuff, he wouldn't have taken that inspiration.
This young man, who many in Rome had doubted, had just shut those silly billies. Right, the flip-up.
Yep.
Mere years ago, it looked like Rome had no chance of even surviving this war. But now, the momentum of war was shifting astonishingly fast. And for Hannibal in Italy, things continued to head south. Before Scipio had even gone to Spain, the Romans had placed Capua, Hannibal's largest city in Italy, under a dangerous siege. And in order to rescue it, Hannibal needed to take drastic action. Fast. Man, everything's falling apart. Fine, I'll do it. Do what? Yeah, you've convinced me. I'll march on Rome. Hannibal, that conversation was 5 years ago.
Yeah. And arguably, if you marched on Rome back then, most likely you would have succeeded. Well, would have been successful because, they were a bit more unorganized, unprepared, and more importantly, very low morale.
It's too late. No one's trying to convince you to march on Rome.
I said I'll do it!
Quit nagging me! Ugh. Hannibal finally marched on Rome, hoping it might draw the Romans away from Capua. The Romans saw Hannibal approaching their city, and they freaked the hell out.
Fair
Hannibal
enough.
is said to have closely approached the city walls, inspecting the defenses, as the Romans inside quivered in their togas. However, Hannibal probably knew he had no chance of taking the city. The whole thing was a feint, and Hannibal soon left. The Romans famously coined the phrase, Hannibal is at the gates, to describe a moment of crisis or severe desperation. But for accuracy's sake, the phrase should probably be, Hannibal is at the gates. But don't worry, it's just a feint to draw the Romans away from Capua. And it didn't even work, because the Romans stayed at Capua, and the Capuans misunderstood and thought Hannibal had abandoned them. And so, they surrendered the city. But apparently that's not as catchy. Despite a few
Give me a
successes,
second.
misunderstood and thought Hannibal had abandoned them. And so, they surrendered the city. But apparently...
Yeah, that's not as catchy.
It's not as catchy. Despite a few successes, including an ambush in 208 BC, where Hannibal managed to kill both consuls in one go, Hannibal was slowly but steadily losing his grip on southern Italy. Even Hasdrubal, who had fled Spain to join Hannibal, never reached his brother. He made his own dramatic crossing of the Alps, just as Hannibal had done. But unlike Hannibal, the second Hasdrubal arrived in Italy, he was immediately pulverized.
Yep.
The Romans then took his head and threw it over the walls into his brother's camp. Hannibal was becoming extremely isolated. After his impressive conquest of Spain, Scipio returned to Rome a hero. And when the election came for next year's consuls, despite not meeting the typical requirements, Scipio won in a landslide. But the question now was, what would he do next? All right, what's your plan then, Scipio? You're gonna go fight Hannibal now, right? Get this, Fabius. No. Scipio's plan remained the same as before. Don't attack the monster directly. Attack his base of support, which
Modern
now
tactics.
happened Carthage itself. That's right.
Well, time to go on some massacres.
Scipio would invade Africa. However, Scipio understood that any invasion of Africa would stand a much better chance if he could secure an alliance with one of the African tribes. Throughout the war, Carthage's far superior Numidian cavalry, which came from this part of Africa, had played a critical role in winning battles.
That's true.
Numidia was divided between two rival kings. In the east, the king Syphax had sympathized with Rome for much of the war. And so at some point, Scipio visited Syphax to ratify a treaty. It just so happened, however, that the Carthaginian general Hasdrubal Gisco, whom Scipio had fought in Spain, also arrived at the exact same time.
Uh-oh.
And so Syphax invited both Scipio and Gisco for a meal. The two men fought for Syphax's alliance, and by Roman accounts, Scipio was positively charming. Come on, Syphax, stick with us Romans. We'll build a naked statue of you.
Fair
Very
enough.
enticing. If you join our side, Syphax, we'll give you a 2% discount on figs. You like figs, don't you?
Nah.
Not really. Hey, Syphax, check this out.
Yeah.
Wow! Hey, Syphax, check this out. Did he just defecate? I believe he did. Well, Scipio, you clearly are the most charming man in the Mediterranean. My alliance is... Syphax, I'll let you marry my extremely hot daughter. Yours! Humana, humana! Unable
Yeah.
to compete with Syphax's...
See, we men have one weakness. Yeah. Especially in that time.
beat him. Scipio instead made contact with Syphax's rival, the other Numidian king, Massinissa, who was a longtime ally of Carthage. Scipio told Massinissa, "If you join the Romans, I'll help you defeat Syphax and become the ultimate Numidian king." And so Massinissa was now on Team Rome. Good job, Skippy. With a Numidian alliance solidified, Scipio prepared for his invasion of Africa. He raised a volunteer force that included many of the disgraced survivors from Cannae, and he set sail. Well, Terry, any news from Italy? Has Hannibal won the war yet? Who on earth? Here's Skippy!
Yeah!
The Roman landing sent a clear message to the Carthaginians. You don't invade us. No, we invade you. For
Just wait till the Third Punic War. For those wondering about that one, let's just say Rome was just very tired at that point of Carthage, and was like, you know what? How about we get rid of them once and for all? Some things happened, and Rome found a way to justify for war, and went and massacred them.
first time in the war, the Carthaginian homeland was under threat, and the Carthaginians needed to defeat Scipio at all costs. They gathered a huge army led by Hasdrubal Gisco with allied Numidians led by Syphax, and they ordered them to get Scipio the hell off their continent. Sources say at this point, Scipio was severely outnumbered. Scipio That army's huge. There's no way we can beat off all these men. All these men vigorously. And while maintaining eye contact. As always.
Oh, oh, oh. Ooh. Yeah, no. OverSimplified knew what he was doing with that one. What? I mean, I have to give it to Scipio. At the end of the day.
Scipio had a plan to deal with the larger enemy force. It just so happened that Syphax was offering to try and broker peace between the Romans and the Carthaginians. And Scipio smelled an opportunity. He sent a Roman envoy to Syphax's camp. And when they got there, Syphax was like, "Hey guys, welcome to the enemy camp. Just before we begin negotiations, a small safety demonstration. As you can see, our huts are made of grass and reeds. Very flammable. If there was even a single spark, this whole place would become a raging inferno, and all my men would burn alive." Very interesting. The Roman troops then reported back to Scipio about the Numidian camp, its construction, and most importantly, its flammability. Then, the following night, as the sun was setting over the beautiful African plains, and the Carthaginians got all comfy in their beds, they began to gently dream of Carthaginian figs and child sacrifice.
Yep.
Good night, Carthaginians. Good night, Syphax and Gisco. Good evening, Scipio.
Yeah.
In the night, shadowy Roman figures approached the Numidian camp. As the Numidians lay in their beds, Scipio executed his plan. The camp erupted into flames. With the flammable wooden huts, the fires spread terrifyingly fast. Men were burned in their beds. Those who awoke in a panic, believing the fire to have been some kind of terrible accident, rushed to the exits without their weapons and armor. Those who saw the fire from the Carthaginian camp also rushed out unarmed. And when they got there he was, Scipio, the Romans, and their steel.
Hey, wait a sec. Oh, that's from Rise, son of Rome. Oh god, it's been forever since I played that game.
The terrified Carthaginians were massacred, and with heavy casualties, Hasdrubal and Syphax fled the scene of the disaster. Scipio followed this incredible success with another victory against the pair at the Battle of the Great Plains. After that, Massinissa chased his rival Syphax into his kingdom, where Syphax was captured. Massinissa was now the ultimate Numidian king. He entered Syphax's capital city. He seized Syphax's palace. He even married Syphax's wife. And when Scipio got mad at him for marrying a Carthaginian girl, he then poisoned his wife.
Yeah.
Boys will be boys. Having defeated the Carthaginian armies in Africa, almost nothing now stood between Scipio and Carthage. And the Carthaginians were freaking out. What do we do? What do we do? There's only one thing left to do. Recall him. Well, Hannibal, you've been here in Italy for 16 years. This is practically your home. You're basically Italian. Yes, Gerald, and I've had such a lovely time. I ate spaghetti, did this with my hands. I've committed my whole life to this campaign, and once Rome has fallen, it'll all have been worth it. Hannibal, you have to return to Carthage. Your Italian campaign has been for nothing. Your whole life has been a waste. No! Imagine being Hannibal in this moment. You left Carthage when you were 9. You probably barely even recognize your own homeland. The kingdom he had built in Spain with his father? Gone. And now his Italian campaign, his vengeance. Was it really all for nothing? But that was that. Carthage was under threat, and Hannibal had to protect his home city. As he left Italy,
This was the genius move.
In Rome, there was celebration, but also
Oh no. The Romans became American far too early.
trepidation. Now, Scipio would have to face Hannibal in Africa, where Hannibal would have home advantage. While Hannibal was on his way, the Carthaginians stalled for time and approached Scipio for peace talks. Hey, look, we never meant to start an all-out 2-decade-long war, but you did. No, that was Hannibal. He's to blame for all of this. Well, all right then. Sign this peace treaty. Okay, let me just get my signature right on there.
He's here. Yes. Oh, look who's here, you bald prick. You're so dead now, Skippy. Don't call me that!
After Carthage
Yeah, that seemed about right.
posed peace, only to then
For those wondering why I say that, is because, yeah, historically, they were just stalling for Hannibal to, get here.
back on it. The normally merciful Scipio was enraged. He began refusing to accept town's surrender, and instead began burning everything to the ground, selling everyone into slavery.
That was the Roman thing to do back then.
Hannibal, he's burning our towns. Go stop him. Guys, he's obviously trying to lure me out there to fight on those flat plains, where his Numidian cavalry will give him the advantage. It's
Yep.
trick. Well, it's working. Go and fight him. It's obviously a trap, and we're falling for it.
Yep.
Fight him! Hannibal set out to meet Scipio in the western plains. And here came Scipio's final test. Finally, the teacher would face the student. The two greatest generals of all time in...
Well, at this point in time for the Roman Republic, because this is still before the time of their later leader of Julius Caesar and then Augustus Caesar, which Julius Caesar was the last one for, well, the Roman Republic, and kind of begun the Roman Empire, but really Augustus begun it, but it's argued that it was really more started, that Rome has became less of a republic over the amount of time.
last, decisive battle. Would Hannibal's genius still shine through? Or would Scipio prove that he had surpassed the master? Before battle, the two great generals rode out from their camps and met in person for the first time. Hannibal, I'm a huge fan. I thought you'd have more hair, and I thought you'd have more eyes. Touché.
I mean, hey, if you're going to point out a dude being bald, he gets to point out something that, you lack.
Had a conversation, which I'll paraphrase. Hannibal said, "At the start of this war, I had great fortune in Italy. But look at me now, a sad old man who, like other sad old men, failed to conquer Rome. Your fortune can change rapidly, Scipio. You should consider negotiating a peace rather than risking it all in one last fight against me." Very eloquently put. Scipio then replied,
Q! Negotiate!
Yeah, one of the few things you never do with Romans, especially after you've already done war on them, never ask to negotiate.
Negotiate what? I took Spain. I'm about to burn your pathetic city to the ground. What could you offer me in negotiations? I already have it all! Ah!
Seriously though, Hannibal, I am such a big fan. And so,
Yeah, that seemed about right.
settled. The two great generals would face off one last time in the epic Battle of Zama. Scipio gave his men, consisting of many survivors from Cannae, a pre-battle speech, telling them not only would they gain redemption, but they could become masters of the world. Hannibal told his men probably nothing, because most of them didn't even speak the same language.
Yeah, that seems about right, because a lot of Hannibal's groups were of different local areas, so, they didn't really have the communication barrier as compared to Rome, where they were just speaking in Latin all the time.
Two armies lined up for battle. Something interesting became clear. Hannibal had more infantry and hoped to use them to brute strength the Romans. But Scipio had the nimble Numidian cavalry and hoped to pull off an envelopment. It was a complete role reversal of Cannae. As the battle began, Hannibal made his first move. He sent his 80 war elephants to smash through and weaken the Roman infantry. Scipio had the perfect response. He had altered his formation to create passages between the Roman maniples. His light troops stepped aside at the right moment, revealing the gaps ahead of the charging elephants. Elephants, if given the choice between a suicide charge into spears or a nice clean escape, will probably choose the escape. And
Which, to be honest, let's face it, elephants are not exactly full-on war hungry like us humans and our close cousins, the chimpanzees. We are just war hungry. Elephants are not. Well, unless if you've done something to them, but yeah, they're still smart enough to know, oh no, this is too dangerous.
what happened? Some elephants were so frightened from the noise that they even turned and smashed back into the Carthaginian cavalry.
Yep. Because if there's any tactic that works against any animal with large ears, make a lot of noise. I'm not kidding. That would work. Because, like most animals, yeah, they'll be scared of a giant, crazy amount of noise.
The Roman cavalry then engaged. Your move, Hannibal. Hannibal wasn't an idiot. He knew that he was fighting superior Numidian cavalry on open plains. So when his weaker cavalry ended up being routed from the battlefield, he probably wasn't surprised and hoped the Roman cavalry would be lured as far from the battlefield as possible, because his infantry needed time to do a clever little job. Hannibal had the numerical advantage, and he had positioned his army in 3 lines. The weaker troops were at the front, while his best men, the army that had been with him in Italy, were in the rear. As the Romans smashed into the weaker front lines, they managed to cut through them, but suffered losses and exhaustion in doing so. The same with Hannibal's second line, so that by the time the Romans reached Hannibal's superior third line, the 2 sides may have now been about equal in number. But the exhausted Romans had just fought an entire battle to get there, while the remaining Carthaginians were fresh and ready to go. Hannibal was still a genius. And this is where the final race began. Could Hannibal's stronger infantry finish off the Romans before the Roman cavalry returned from their pursuit? Who would be quicker, the Carthaginian infantry or the Roman cavalry? The answer:
The Roman cavalry.
the cavalry. They had called off their pursuit just in time to turn around and hit Hannibal from the rear. And that was the deciding move. As the sandwiched Carthaginians were hacked to pieces, Hannibal knew he had lost, and he escaped the battlefield.
That he did. And he fled for a very long time in his exile.
It was a battle that some historians say was well fought on both sides.
It
Both
was indeed.
showed their genius, but fortune fell in the favor of Scipio. With just a few thousand Roman casualties compared to 40,000 Carthaginians, Scipio had won. Hannibal advised the Carthaginian Senate that it was time to surrender. 17 years of war, finally over. The terms Rome placed on Carthage were harsh. They lost territory and were prohibited from starting any more wars with anyone without Rome's explicit permission. Carthage basically became a weak Roman client state. And what of these 2 military geniuses? Well, Scipio returned to Rome triumphant. For his victory in Africa, he was given the title Scipio Africanus,
Which would later become the word where we got the word Africa from.
He had delivered Rome from an existential threat, and so, from here on out, he was primed to dominate Roman politics. He was even offered to become consul for life, but he humbly refused.
Good. Because a lot of the times in crisis for the Romans, even when they did, this is for more specifically the Roman Republic, where they did elect leaders, they would elect a few people in some certain times of crises, which they would become, at that point, dictators, which, although now it sounds quite bad, but back then it just meant more of a permanent leader in only temporarily that would then step down. And would you know it? A lot of them did actually step down after, crisis happened.
Politics being what it is, however, jealousy eventually grew. Scipio and his family ended up battling accusations of corruption. And Scipio, possibly becoming tired of Roman politics, retired to a nice country house by the coast.
Hey, don't blame him. It's a nice coast, the Italian coast. Nice place to retire.
Also took a leading role in Carthaginian politics after the war. But again, due to jealousy, factionalism, and a possibility of arrest by the Romans, he eventually entered exile. He spent the remainder of his years out east, even advising enemies of Rome. Rome's hatred of Hannibal endured, and they never stopped hoping to someday capture the monster. One story is told of how when a much older Hannibal was chilling in the city of Ephesus, a Roman delegation was sent to the city, and in that delegation was Scipio Africanus. The two men met for the second time, and they seemed to have gotten along quite well. Scipio asked Hannibal who he thought the three greatest generals of all time were. Hannibal placed Alexander the Great in number 1.
Fair enough.
Epirus in number 2, and in third place, himself. Scipio then asked, "And what if you had defeated me at Zama?" "Well, Scipio, then I would have been the greatest general of all time. Please, call me Skippy." Eventually, around 183 BC, Hannibal, now in his 60s, came under threat of Roman capture. After a long life, he chose to take some poison. According to Livy, his last words, "Let us now relieve the Romans of the anxiety they have so long experienced, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for an old man's death."
To be fair, I gotta give it to Hannibal. He single-handedly gave the Roman Republic a nightmare situation to the point where, yeah, they were desperately wanting him to die. Yeah, think about that. That's like the equivalent of having all of Europe declare war on Napoleon himself and not the nation he's in or the nation he led. Yeah, and now, I know that's a bit of a different situation, but think about that. The Romans wanted Hannibal dead for rights because, A, he not only massacred a lot of their people in war, which, happens. He also gave them a pretty big slap to the face with military tactics.
Wow, Hannibal. What a dignified end.
He's dead.
Gross. And there you have it. The Second Punic War. Finally done. It took 17 years to end the war. And on a personal note, making these videos has also taken 17 years off my life.
Yep.
Carthage began to recover from the war, shockingly fast, however. And anxieties over Carthage would remain in Rome. In particular, one senator would begin calling for one last crusade against Carthage to end the threat once and for all. He famously began to end all of his speeches with one singular phrase, one of the most famous phrases in Roman history.
Yeah. And next up is coming, well, the Third Punic War, which is very much more one-sided. Anyways, it's coming eventually. Anyways, first of all, that was quite an amazing thing. And second of all, yeah, He did do that. And lastly, yeah, all the copyright belongs to OverSimplified. Original link to the video is down in the description. And I have to give it to OverSimplified. I can't wait to see what you have coming in store for us. Because I believe after the Punic War trilogy, if you can call it that, I think you still owe us the Vietnam War Oversimplified. Because as much as I would like to say it's a complicated matter to begin, nothing can be done. But anyways, when we just check this, hold on. So, D-say, wow, alright. Alright, let me check.
This video.
Yeah, alright, you know what? I have to give props to Oversimplified. Yeah, he did say it was gonna be, it was not gonna be a year. I agreed. He kept true on his promise. Anyways, so what do I say? Yeah, original link in the description. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Goodbye.